Be joyous, and the earth rejoice. Yiramayam ublo, and all the oceans of the world, and all that are filled. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Everybody together. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim. Next line. Yeramayam, 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 umelo. Yeramayam, 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 umelo. Yismechu hashamayim, hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim. Occasionally I'll be using for God's name Yah. Okay, you may have heard it. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Yeah. Okay. Just want to show you it's perfectly kosher to use it. Adonai is a euphemism because you can't pronounce God's name. It's 4 letters, Yud Hey Vav Hey. You can't pronounce it. The only way you can pronounce it is through breath. So Yah is a breath name. Right? So every time you're alive, every moment you are alive and you're breathing, you have the capacity of praising God's name. So that's what life is. Life should be praised. Gratefulness. Taking in that breath, oh, wow. Taking it in again, wow. Letting it out, wow. And we lose that wowness in our lives, unfortunately, right? I was going to start a religion once called Wowism. You know, where all you do is walk around and go, wow, wow, wow. And if you're a dog, you go, bow, wow. So it's really wonderful. Everybody going, wow. Our third psalm is Psalm 97 on page 6. Or zaru le tzaddik, light is sown for the tzaddik, the just one, and simcha, gladness for those who are ethical. Tzaddikim, just ones, rejoice in Yah and give thanks to God's holy name, to the consciousness of Yah's uniqueness. Or zaru ala tzaddik, ole yishrele simcha. Or zaru ala tzaddik, ole yishrele simcha. Simchu tzaddikim b'haya, vehodu lezeche kodsho. Simchu tzaddikim b'haya, everybody together. Or zarua la tzaddik, ole yishrele simcha. Or zarua la tzaddik, ole yishrele simcha. Simchu tzaddikim b'haya, vehodu lezeche kodsho. Simchu tzaddikim b'haya, vehodu lezeche kodsho. Sing unto Yah, Psalm 98. This is so important. Shiru ladonai, you'll have the transliteration there. Shiru ladonai shir chadash. Sing to Yah. That which can't be grasped. Instead, Yah is beyond our. It's not an intellectual thing. It's a thing that tries to get your emotions going, right? So sing to Yah a new song, a new song. And every day we have a new song. If we wish to have the new song, we can open ourselves to a new song. And it goes at the end, it says, Lifnei Adonai kiva lishbot haaretz, yishbot tevel betzedek, ve'yamim b'meisharim. Let's read together the last paragraph on page 8. Let the sea roar and that it contains, the world and they that dwell in it. Let the rivers clap their hands, let all the mountains sing for joy. Before Yah, for Yah comes to judge the earth. God will judge the world with righteousness and peoples with equity. Psalm 99, it's on page 9. And here we have in the middle of the page, Romemu, raise up. Raise up Yah Eloheinu. Now I would say, why do we have to do that? God doesn't need us to raise God up, right? What's the reason? It's because ultimately we support the possibility of the divine. It's a great assignment to have, by the way, right? Not everybody takes that very seriously, but we have an assignment. The assignment is to raise up, but it also means to raise up that place within yourself that is divine. For me, the definition of tefillah or prayer, hit palel in Hebrew, it's a reflexive verb, by the way. You don't do it out to something, you do it to yourself. Is that you're appealing to your higher self. So if you come out of a service saying, I think I had an opportunity to let my higher self emerge, good, gedavened. You davened good. You prayed good, right? But otherwise, it's just saying words. So here we say we will use a model by raising up God's name on the middle of page 9, Psalm 99. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu vehishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu vehishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ay rai rai alai lai alai li lai lai amdari rai rai ay rai rai ri rai rai ay rai rai alai rai alai li lai lai amdari rai rai ay rai rai ri rai rai. The ineffable one who guards us, Eloheinu, rather than our God. Make it into a verb. When you make God into a noun, you capture it, you hold it hostage. That's what nouns do, by the way. You define things by a noun. Chair. Stays a chair, right? You can call it giraffe, but it stays a chair. So when you don't use a noun and you say it's really a dynamic verb, it guides you throughout your life as you change. And that dynamism is very important to understand. Our sense of the divine is dynamic. You might approach it when you're 8 years old in a certain way, and you might approach it differently when you're 80. And if you're still approaching it in 80 as you did when you were 8, maybe you need to do a little more work. A little more work on that. So, Adonai Lamabu Yashav, Psalm 29 on page 10. Adonai Lamabu Yashav, Vayishev Ya Melech Liolam, Haya Ozliya Mo Yited, Haya Yivarech Et Amo B'Shalom. One of the oldest pieces of this service is a contemporary one for us. It's only 600 years old. So for us, that's contemporary, because we have stuff that we're doing that's 3,000 years old, okay? The Psalms, for instance, at least 2,500 years. So this is new stuff. So we'll see if it works. It's only 600 years. So far, so good. So far, good. It's called Lachadodi. It's on page 12. And it's a song of love, of wooing the Shekhinah, the indwelling presence, the feminine presence, if you will, of God into the world, into Shabbat. So there are many, many wonderful tunes that have been made for this. It's a beautiful poem, and the person who wrote the poem is up there, Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz. If you look at the first letter of each stanza, he put his name into it. Shin Lamed Mem Hey. That's how he did it. It's very cleverly done. And notice that first line in the refrain is what we just set up. We light a candle, Shamor v'Zachor b'Dibur Echad, to celebrate and recall in a single act. So both of the things are two sides of a coin. Lecha dodi likrat kahala p'nei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi likrat kahala p'nei Shabbat nikabela. Shamor v'zochor b'dibur echad ishmiyanu ela meyuchad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad v'shemu letiferet v'letila. Hai rai 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 rai. Hi, da, da, dee, da, 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 da. See if you can clap at the right time. La, 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 li, la, la. Hi, da, 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 da. Ham, da, da, dee, da, da. Lecha, dodi, likrat, kala. Behene Shabbat nekabela lekrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki mikor habracha merosh mikedem nesucha sof maaseh b'machshava techila hay rai 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 hay rai 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 lecha dodi lekrat kala Behene Shabbat nekabela lecha dodi likrat kala Behene Shabbat nekabela migdash melech yir melucho kumitzi mitoch hafecha ravla shevet v'yemeka bacha vehu yachmol alay chemla ay rai 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 Hi, rai, rai, ri, rai, 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 rai. Lecha dodi likra. Page 13. Hey, Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Pehene Shabbat nekabela. Shake off the dust, my people arise. Robe yourself with light and joy. The future within is revealed now. The freedom to be enters my soul. I die, 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 die. I die, 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 die. Lecha dodi likra atkala. Behene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likra atkala. Behene Shabbat nekabela. Awake, awake, my love, awake. Your light is come, now be light. Rise, now rise, sing your new song. The splendor of God is open through you. Hi, di, 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 di. Hi, di, 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 di. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Hey, Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Pehene Shabbat nekabela. Lo devoshi v'lo tikalmi. Mahat ishtochachi umahatemi. Bach yechesu ani yami. V'nivneta iral tila. Ay, rai, 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 rai. Hi, rai, 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 rai. Lecha dodi likra. Page 14. Pehene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Pehene Shabbat nekabela. Those who destroyed you are now destroyed. All who devoured far, far away. Your God takes pleasure in your joy, just as a groom makes love to his bride. Hi, lie, 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 lie. Oh, hi, di, 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 di. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Behene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Behene Shabbat nekabela. Yamiru smol et ifrotzi. V'yed yad taharitzi. Al yad ish ben parzi. V'nismecha v'nagela. Hai, rai, 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 rai. Hi, rai, 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 rai. Hi, rai, 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 rai. Hi, rai, 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 rai. Hi, rai, rai, rai. Hi, rai, 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 rai, rai. We rise and face and greet Shabbat coming in. Boi b'shavalom materet balo. Gam b'simcha u'v'tzahala. Toch emune am segula. Boi chala. Boi chala. Hi, rai, 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 rai. Hi, da, da, dee, da, 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 da. La, 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 la. Hi, da, 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 da. Ya, ba, da, bim, bum, bye. Hi, da, 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 da. Ya, la, la, li, la, la. Hi, da, 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 da. Hum, da, da, dee, da, da. Hi, da, da, dee, da, da. Ya, da, 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 da. Hi, da, da, dee, da, da. Hi, da, 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 da. Hi, da, 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 da. Hi, da, 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 hi, da. Anybody familiar with that tune? Ever? You ever hear it? Anybody? You heard it from me. I mean, obviously, but I've been doing it. But it comes from a film, one of the first Israeli films in the 1950s, starring a man called Chaim Topol. We may remember from the Fiddler on the Roof film and other things. And the film was called Shabbat Services. And it was about a Moroccan immigrant coming to those days when immigrants had to live in tents, when they were first coming over in the beginning years of the State of Israel. And it was a comedy, a very funny comedy. He was a very wise guy, and he knew how to get stuff from the Jewish agency, which was sponsoring things. And he had a lot of clever tricks that he played. Like when they came to plant a tree in Israel, you know the idea, you plant a tree, you pay something, you put your name on the tree, right? So he would ask for a few cents or whatever when they were there, and he'd help with the planting. And then when they went away, he'd take out the sign and put up another sign, right? So it was always, people were always planting the same tree. It was very clever. And this was a theme song of it, and it was a movie that also starred people who become very famous in Israeli culture. Arik Einstein, a great singer, Gila Almagor, a great actress, and it was just a classic film. I don't know if you can get it online, but it's called Shabbat Services, and it's quite a wonderful film. Well, now we're going to be in Shabbat. All this has been sort of, as one of my teachers used to call it, foreplay. Now we're getting to Shabbos. So if you look at page 15, Psalm 92, that's a Sabbath psalm, and it's always accompanied by a sister psalm, 93 of the following page. And it's a beautiful psalm, and we'll read the beginning of it in English so we can know what we're saying. Let's read together. It is a good thing to give thanks to Yah, to sing praises to your exalted, most high name, Elyon, the Most High, to declare your loving kindness in the morning and your faithfulness in the nights, with the instrument of 10 strings, with the navel, the dulcimer, with a solemn sound upon the kinnor, the harp. For you, Yah, has made me glad through all of your works. I will be joyous and exult in the works of your hands. How great, Magadlu, are your works, Yah. Your thoughts arise from the very depths of creation. A brutish person will not perceive this, nor will a fool comprehend this. Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat Tov Lehodot Laya Ulezamer Leshimcha Elyon Lehagid Baboker Chastecha Ve'emunatcha Baleilot Alei Asor Ve'alei Navel Alei Higayom Bechinor Ki Simachtani Ya Befalecha B'maaseh Yadecha Aranein Magadlu Maasecha Ya Me'od amku machshevotecha Ish bal lo yeda Uchesir lo yavin et zot. The last 4 lines, they say, the righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. They shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Yah, they shall flourish in the courts of our God. They will still bring forth fruit in old age. They will be juicy and rich with sap, to declare that Yah is upright, my rock, in whom there is no falsehood or wickedness. Let's sing together the 4 last lines. צדיק תמר יפרח, כרס בלבנון יזכה, שתולים בבית בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו, או ג'נובון בסבע, דשנים ורננים יהיו להגיד, כי ישר יצורי ולא עוולה תבוא. The middle of page 16. ומכל עוד מים רבים, אדירים משברי יום, אדירים משברי ים, אדים במרום אדוני, אדים במרום אדוני, עדותיך נאמנו מאוד, לביתך נב הקודש, אדוני לאורך ימים, אדוני לאורך ימים. If you are in mourning or have a yahrzeit, please rise for the Kaddish on page 17. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמה דברה חירותי, וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ומעולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה ברכו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה ויאמרו, יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ויאמרו amen. You may be seated. Good to see you all. Nice to see you. It's wonderful to see people in person in general. So I'm glad you're all here. Usually I see them in little boxes. It's not the same. It really isn't the same. So we're here at 4th of July weekend. 4th of July. In my family, 4th of July was very, very important. A day of celebration, a day of remembrance. My parents were Shoah survivors, and after the war, they were at the displaced persons camps for about 3.5 years, 4 years. And as you may know, the gates of most of the world were still closed, even after the war. And there were literally, hundreds of thousands of displaced persons. We're experiencing this, unfortunately, in our own very, very, very day. And they were able to finally get into the United States in 1949, and that was because Truman was pushed to create, as we've seen recently, 100,000 visas for stateless people. We've seen this now with Afghanis and others, and people from the Ukraine. And they had to be pushed a little bit. You couldn't get into Palestine legally. There was a lot of illegal immigration. So things were rather bleak in a way. And they arrived around the 4th of July. I was born 2 weeks after their arrival. So I can be president. Not that I would want to be, but I can be president. So every year, for many, many years, we would make the 4th of July an opportunity to celebrate. We would go out to the Statue of Liberty, which of course is the symbol of all of this. And we would get a picnic, we'd walk to the top. Anybody walked to the top of the statue recently? No, it's spiral stairs. And as I gained a little weight, it gets harder and harder to fit in that spiral. But as a kid, it was quite great. You went all the way up, and at that time, you go all the way to the crown and look out onto the New York Harbor. Really an amazing thing. And for us, it was really an important holiday because it really said, we have arrived. We're now part of this new for them, a new experience in their lives. They were, up in years. They weren't kids. But they rebuilt their lives, and it was a struggle. And, like all refugees, you move into neighborhoods that have gone down. So you're at the tail end of most places you move into because the prices were more reasonable. And it really was a very important date for us because ultimately, when you talk about liberty and what it means to be part of this country, we are basically in a very difficult time where that word is now understood in many ways, and in some ways they're seen as antagonistic to each other, the two ways of understanding the liberty. Is liberty only your individual rights, or is liberty an ethos that you want to bring into the world? And for many years, that's what America was about. We were never perfect. I don't want to get any, good old days. We have flaws like everything else. However, we did try for a long time to offer people opportunity. And of course, that's really one of the great struggles now, is that people have this sense of the fact that their opportunities have been diminished in a certain way, and that explains perhaps a little bit more about our political stalemate that we're in. So the Statue of Liberty, of course, had at the bottom a poem written by a Jewish woman named Emma Lazarus. Give you huddled, right, the whole thing. It really was a heartfelt idea that people who really were in need of finding a haven could find it here. That was really what it was, to find a haven here. And people struggled to get here. Many of your ancestors, I'm sure, came much earlier, perhaps at the turn of the century, perhaps before the First World War, some after the First World War. But as you know, from 1880 to 1914, about 2 million Jews from Eastern Europe arrived in the United States, and they really created the bulk of the Jewry that we have today. But now it's already 5 or 6 generations from them. And it's almost like science fiction when I tell the young people there was a time when Jews struggled financially. And then they had push carts, and they worked in sweatshops, and they did whatever they could to survive and to make sure their kids could make the move from that first point of settlement. Every city had its own version of the Lower East Side, right? These usually were very mixed environments, Italians, Irish, and Jews, all of them who were trying to become part of this highly Protestant country. We have to really, really see this. And this, unfortunately, seems to be on the mind of a lot of people, to basically define ourselves again as a Christian country, predominantly a Protestant country. We have to be very careful of that. We're seeing that last week with the Supreme Court made it possible to really mix a little bit of that church and state. It's very frightening. We have to be very careful about that. So this idea that this is a haven made us think, but we imbibed with our mother's milk in this country the fact that democracy is a Jewish value, which is not part of Judaism. I hate to break it to many of you, but it's part of what it means to be a Jew in this country. There is no democracy in Judaism. Nobody ever votes for the who's going to be the head of the community. Nobody votes for that, right? It's hard to get people to agree to do it, but once they do it, we give them a certain level of authority. So it's self-selective in a way, basically. So democracy, we drink it like mother's milk, and that's why when we look at the world and we see that there are places now that see democracy as something that will hold them back from whatever vision they have of the future, we scratch our heads. You say, what? How is this going to help you in the long run? But authoritarianism basically sees democracy as an impediment to power. An impediment to power. People want power, and the best way to get power is divide people. You divide people, and you will have more power. And we've seen this, unfortunately, over the years, recent years. So we have to really work hard, I think, at understanding what democracy is. Now, maybe we made a mistake when we originated this idea of representative democracy. Maybe that was not the way to go. electoral colleges, votes, all that stuff. Maybe we have to reform that. And I just wanted to mention to you that we're dealing a lot now with people talking about the Constitution. You may have heard this term, the Constitution. Somebody said recently, they all know the Second Amendment, but nobody reads the First, which is kind of interesting, you know. But Jefferson, who really was, even though he owned slaves, which is an interesting issue that the great blight, if you will, on America is that we had slave states. Jefferson suggested, and I think we made a mistake not taking it up, is that every 18 years there should be a constitutional convention, and to see which things are still applicable and which things have to be basically discarded. And discarding them, it's fine because you replace them with things that are more advantageous to create a society of people who can be together, right? And this, I think, was a very good idea because now we have on our courts, on the Supreme Court particularly, people who call themselves originalists. I guess we have that in all traditions, people who say, let's go back to the way it was. And if we could only read what's in the minds of John Adams, we would know exactly what to do. But John Adams never had a computer. John Adams didn't know about social media, etc. And there are others who we call loose constructionists, right, who believe exactly that every time we see new things in the world, we have to take them into account in how we understand what freedom is, what freedom of speech is. We have to constantly be doing it. And in Judaism, we have that as well. But in Judaism, we always believe that the text of our Constitution, which is called the Torah, should never be taken literally. I know that sounds bizarre because there are indeed Jews who would say, no, every word, came from Sinai. Moshe was just a stenographer. That's what he was, a stenographer. But that's not what the tradition really says. The tradition says that the Torah is a springboard for discussion. And that was called oral Torah. There was written Torah and oral Torah. And that oral Torah was passed down from generation to generation. And it said, let's interpret this and see what it really means for us today. And if we have to, anybody who's been here in Torah study knows, we deconstruct the Torah and we rebuild it. We deconstruct it and rebuild it. And that's not only a helpful thing in understanding how the Torah came to be over hundreds of years and how it came to be a text for us, but it also gave us the opportunity to say, let's read between the lines of the text and maybe something's teaching us. We have black letters of the Torah, right? The Sefer Torah, which we read tomorrow, the scroll, but there's also white letters in between. So how do you learn to read the white letters as well as the black letters? So this went on for, I would say, 1,000 years, oral tradition, along with the written tradition. And then came the destruction of the Second Temple and the beginning of the dispersion, diaspora. And we were forced to write down oral tradition. We were not permitted to do so, but in order to save it, we had to break the tradition. There's another example. Like you take the exigencies of your own time and you bring it into account. So great Rabbi Judah the Prince, the year 200 CE, presents a new code of law based upon the oral tradition, and that becomes known as the Mishnah. And the Mishnah is the first part of the Talmud. It's usually Mishnah and then Gemara, and together that's what the Talmud is. And what is lovely about the Talmud is that in its discussions of our Constitution, it basically says there can be many different opinions. And perhaps like the court, it does publish the, if you will, minority opinions. And there are many, many minority opinions that are mentioned in the Talmud. So what I would like you to come away with is that you and I have an obligation. And that obligation is to study Torah in a way that makes it possible for you to internalize it in whatever way you do. Because ultimately, we're not a religion that asks you to adhere to a specific doctrine of belief. But we do believe that people should be judged by their actions in the world. That's really what we're saying. So even if you don't feel like giving tzedakah, right, which is mistranslated as charity, I don't care, give it. mean, it's not based anymore about your own personal feelings that day. Like, there's some mornings I don't want to daven, but you daven. It's like people who say, I don't want to go to the gym and I can't understand why I'm not losing weight. You know, I signed up but I don't go. So, but the proof of is showing that you can go, that you can overcome other things within you. So I urge all of us to extend our branch of the tree of life. The Torah is called the tree of life, Eitz Chaim, right? So I urge all of you, if you have not taken this seriously, remember, and I think this is something we often forget, you are somebody's ancestors. There will be people someday who will say, this is the way they did it in Brookline. They're not going to say Vilna. They're not going to say Tehran. They're not going to say Marrakesh. They're not going to say that. They're going to say Brooklyn, Brookline, Newton, maybe a little different than Brookline. Whatever it is, we create tradition. And those are the traditions that will move on. And the way I've been given the tradition, I'm trying, as what I do in my life, is to pass that on. And then desire, how better than expect? You can't have expectation. Desire that the Torah is sweet enough in your mouths that you'll say, this is worthy of passing on to the next generation. And weiter, 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 we hope. So far, so good. Despite everything, we're still here. We're still here. Against all the odds, we're still here. So I hope you take that in as we talk about the 4th of July. It is liberating. It is liberating to be able to take your tradition and make it something that really serves as a grounding for you in life. A grounding for you in life. So when we talk about being free, we're not talking about anarchy. As a matter of fact, what frees us in this country and Judaism, what frees us is the fact that we have a set of law. Not anarchy. Freedom is found in structure. Those who have ever raised a child know that's what you have to give a child, is a structure. And that child will grow within the structure and hopefully will be a positive development that the child has. So I'm so glad you're all here. It's nice to see you all. And we'll begin our evening service. I'm going to invite you to rise for our evening service. So on page 19, if you're able to rise. And I will invite you to our service with the Baruch Hu on page 19. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed. You may be seated. The structure of the evening service is quite simple. It talks about a trinity. We have a trinity in Judaism. It's called creation, revelation, and redemption. God, Torah, and Israel. Early Christianity wanted to replace that. So they had God, then they had Jesus as Torah, replacing Torah. That's why you have the famous Sermon on the Mount. He's the new Moses, right? And then you have, instead of redemption, you have basically the Holy Spirit, and we know that's been very successful. They've done very well with that over the years. Well, we have a Trinity as well. And the Trinity, we will now recite different blessings to express that Trinity. The first one on page 19, which I hope you'll read with me, is the beginning of light and creation. Light and creation. So I'm going to read it. You can read it with me along. You have transliteration there. It's a beautiful poem, and it's worth learning Hebrew just to be able to understand this poem. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher bidvaro mariv aravim, b'chokhmah potech sharim, b'tfuna meshane itim, u'machalif et hazmanim, u'mesader et hakochavim b'mishmeroteihem, b'rakia kirtzono. Borei yom v'layla, kol or mifnei choshech, v'choshech mifnei or. U'ma'avir yom u'mehevi layla, u'mavdil ben yom u'ben layla, Adonai Tzevaot Shemo, El Chai V'Kayam, Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Li'olam Va'ed, Baruch atah Hamari Varavim. Rousing amen. Otherwise, I got to read it again. The amen concludes the prayer. So, this is the blessing of light. And now we get to the blessing of love. Ahavat olam, love, page 20. Ahavat olam beit Yisrael, hamcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al ken ya Eloheinu, v'shokveinu u'vkumeinu, nasiach bechukecha, v'nismach b'divrei torotecha, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגה יומם ולילה, יומם ולילה. ועבדך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה יה אוהב עמו ישראל. Torah is seen as a gift of love. Because if you love someone, you try to give them some guidance. And that's what Torah, the translation, is guide. It's not law, it's guide. And that brings us to the Shema. This surrounds the Shema. The Shema is not a prayer. People often say it's the main prayer of Judaism. It's not a prayer. It's a statement. A statement. It's a shout into the world. And this is the way you could translate it. Hear, Yisrael, you who wrestle with God. That's what Yisrael means. God wrestling. You who wrestle with God. Yah, the ineffable. That's which is beyond your grasp. That is who guides us. By observing the world, we learn about how to live. Yah, Echad, is one. And one can be meaning so many things. The number one, the interconnectedness of all things, the oneness that we seek within us as well as without. And that's what we shout. The last word we hope before we pass away, to have the presence of mind, the last thing we'll say, the last word will be, Echad. I always thought it was, that's all, folks, but no, it's Echad. Imagine to leave that in the world. Take a full breath for each word of Shema. Shema Yisrael Havaya Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shem kavod machotu lavud. Please join me. V'ahavta ha'et Adonai Elohecha v'chol lebavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim oele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom halevavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha bebeitecha v'olechtecha v'aderech ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך, ובישעריך. Turn to the middle of page 24 for an interpretation of the second paragraph of the Shema. Please read along with me. V'haya im shamoa. That's ready? We're on the same page, 24 in the middle. If I carefully follow the way I have been shown, the way of justice, mercy, and humility, serving a life with the fullness of my life, then the earth will flourish with righteousness and riches. Pure rain will fall in its season. The earth will bring forth her bounty. My labors will flourish, and the fragrance of life will scent the air like fine oil. There'll be food enough for all, and all will be able to partake of it. No one will exploit another, for no other shall be separate from the one. But beware. if I follow another path, pursuing gods of narrow desire, who separate one from another in quest of power and control, then the heavens will rain poison, creation will fall ill, and I and all will soon disappear from this good earth. Therefore, I impress these words upon my heart to quell anger. I bind them on my hands to stop violence. I set them before my eyes to see the one who is all. By word and by deed I teach them. I repeat them at home and away, morning and night. I write them upon the doorpost of my home and upon my gate, that my dwelling be a haven from ignorance and delusion. Then my days and the days of my people will endure forever, one generation passing righteousness and kindness to the next, all the days of the earth. Adonai Elohechem Emet. Our third blessing, the blessing of redemption, based upon the Exodus from Egypt, the song that was sung after they passed the Reed Sea on dry land. Bottom of page 25. Oh, Malchuto b'ratzon kimu aleim, Moshe Miriam nezchon l'shira, B'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam, Mi chamocha, Im Adonai, Mi chamocha, Nedar b'kodesh, Norati lot, O seifele, Malchut charo b'necha bokei yam lefnei Moshe, Ze Eli anu v'yamru, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed, V'nemar, כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגולו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה היה, גואל Yisrael. The Hashkivenu on page 26, we'll read in English in a moment, was added to the evening service because originally you said the evening service and this right before you went to sleep. Remember, people didn't stay up late. They didn't have enough fuel to light candles. So you basically went to sleep. So this was to say, as you go to sleep. So let's read it. It's amazing how this, over the last 2,000 years, seems relevant for each generation, unfortunately. So let's read together. Cause us, eternal our God, to lie down for well-being, and help us arise, our ruler, to life. Spread over us the shelter of your well-being, and fix in us good counsel in your presence. Save us for the sake of your name, and shield us. Keep far from us enmity, illness, strife, hunger, and fear. Keep oppressors from confronting or pursuing us. Let us be covered by the shadow of your wings, for you are our protector and helper. Mercy and compassion is your rule. Guard our going out and our coming in for life and for well-being from this time forth and forever. And spread over us the shelter of your well-being. Praised are you, Adonai, who spreads over us the shelter of your well-being, and over the people Israel, and over Jerusalem, and over all the world. And I now want to hear a rousing Amen. Ufros aleinu sukat shalomecha, baruch atah haporei sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, al Yerushalayim, v'al kol ha'olam. If you're able to rise, we rise on page 27 for the declaration of the Shabbat. Page 27, top of the page. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת, לדורותם ברית עולם. הבני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. Following the Chatzi Kaddish, which is a transition to the evening Amidah, the standing meditation, starts on page 29, continues to page 39. You can read the Hebrew, you can read the English, you can read the commentaries that are there, and you can take the words on your heart and not read anything. So you'll take it as you will. Yitgadav Shemei Rabbah, Yamad Ebrachirutei V'yam Lichmachirutei, V'chayechon Uvyomechon, Uvchaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, בעגלה בעגלה, ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. ישמר אבא מבורך, לעולם יום יומיה, יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתברך ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה. לעילה מכל בחטא בשירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דהמירן ויעלמה, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום על כל יושבי תבל. Well, we're about to conclude our service, so again, nice to have you all here, and I trust we'll see you again. We'll be hearing announcements about what our services are. We'll be getting to the announcements in a minute, and also for those who need to say Kaddish. So I will ask you, if you could, to rise, if you're able, to conclude our service on page 44 with the Aleinu. Aleinu lishabeach ladon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו גויי ארצות, ולא שמנו משפחות אדמה, שלא שם חלקנו עמהם, וגור עלינו עם כל העולם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שבו לתשמיים וזו. Before you, eternal God, we will bow and fall down at the honor of your name. They will give loyalty. They'll receive each of them the yoke of your sovereignty, and you will speedily reign over them forever and ever. For the sovereignty is yours, and you will reign eternally in honor, as it is written in your Torah, the eternal will reign forever and ever. And as it is said, the eternal will be ruler over all the earth, and on that day, the eternal will be one, and God's name will be one. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yiyeh echad u'shemo echad. You may be seated. They raised the table up a couple of inches. They put wheels on it. So I'm feeling I'm getting shorter and shorter. This coming week, we will commemorate yahrzeit of Gerald Cohen, Percy Davidoff, Betty Friedman Elstein, Phoebe Newman Goodman, Robert Goodman, Sheila Gordon, Janet Rose Hirschberg, David Magid, Simcha Maestrovsky, Sabina Pless, Ann Chagrin, William Schulman, Noam Rogers Stamfer, Ruth Switko, and Morris Taplitz. Any other names to add? Commemorating the yahrzeit this week. So if you're in mourning or if you're in having a yahrzeit, we will say the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol bet Yisrael, v'agalav v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach li'olam u'me'ol maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudsha brichu. Le'ilam min kol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata tamiran b'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlomo Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yimru amen. I'd like to have our dear friend Rachel Goodman give us some announcements of what's going on in the coming week. And if you're interested, if you don't receive our weekly happenings, you can go on the website tbzbrookline.org.
Thank you. Thank you, Reb Moshe. And imagine if you're feeling short, I'm feeling really short. So first of all, I want to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom at the start of the long holiday weekend. And for those of you who are participating this evening via YouTube, my apologies. We had some technical difficulties, but we're all together now, and everything will be fine. Everything should be fine tomorrow morning. So speaking of tomorrow morning, I just want to let folks know that 9 o'clock, we will have Torah study in person, not via YouTube. So come at 9 to learn, and then services will begin at 10. And I would like to let folks know that even though it's the holiday weekend, Rabbi Sam is going to be doing his Hebrew class on Sunday morning from 10:15 to 10:45, focusing on alphabet and vowel review, and then Genesis reading practice and translation study. We will have Boker Tov next week, except on Monday, the 4th of July. We will not be doing Boker Tov together, but the rest of the week, 8 a.m., please join us. Let's see. There are lots of good things happening, but I'm sort of looking at who's here this evening, and I'm not sure who's tuning in via YouTube, but I wanted to highlight that on July 8th from 7:30 to 9 p.m., we're having a special Shabbat dinner for folks who are in their 20s or 30s. So for between that period, and the deadline to sign up for that is Tuesday, July 5th. So if you fall into that category and would like to come together, please sign up and join. And then, also, I'm going to make one final announcement, and that is that I want to just sort of point out to folks that in July, on July 22nd, and then again on August 12th at 6 p.m., we'll be doing Kabbalat Shabbat in Griggs Park. This is a tradition that we've had for a number of years. I think for a while we were doing it up at the top of Summit Ave, but now we're doing it once in July and once in August. So it's a lot of fun.
Bring your own chairs.
Say that
I
again?
think people bring their own chairs.
Yes, bring
Right.
your own chairs.
But it's outdoors, it's fun, it's a beautiful park. If you don't know, it's not too far from here, Griggs Park.
So
Thank
back
you.
to Reverend.
So I'm going to end tonight, because it's the 4th of July weekend, with that poem that I mentioned by Emma Lazarus. She calls it the New Colossus. The New Colossus. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows round the worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep ancient lands your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp before the golden door. Let's rise for America the beautiful as we face our flag. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet whose stern impassioned stress a thoroughfare for freedom beat across the wilderness. America, America, God mend thine every flaw. Confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. If you can remain standing for Kiddush. If you want to follow the Kiddush, it's found in your booklets at page 50. Savrei Chaverai, Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Borei Peri Hagafen. Baruch Ata Ya Eloheinu Melech Olam Asher Kiddishanu Mitzvotav Veratza Banu V'Shabbat Kodsho B'Yavahu V'Ratzon Hinchilanu Zikaron Lemahasei Bereshit Ki Hu Yom Techila למקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, Kivanu v'charta, v'yatanu kidashta em kol oamim, v'shabbat kodshecha, b'yahava u'b'ratzon, hinchaltanu, baruch atah mekadesh HaShabbat. Thank you all for coming. Shabbat Shalom. If we could have someone help us close the windows, I think we're able to reach them, but we have to go up and lock them. So there's a step stool. Just take a window anywhere you find one, and we'll get the step stool to you. Oh, we have a tall person. That was good. Bring your booklets back to the shelves. It'd be great. Thank you. No, I don't think so. We're going for the, I don't think they've locked them yet, no. Thank you very much for help. I'm often a little short. Where are you staying? Oh, no problem. The doors are always open. And where are you staying, with friends? Yes. Oh, nice. That's a very nice hotel. Yeah. And where are you off to after this, New York? You're going to New York after this?
No. I fly back to Ljubljana.
Straight? Is there a flight, a direct flight?
Yeah.
Really? Where do you have to stop?
Zurich and then to
Zurich, uh-huh. And how are things in Ljubljana? Things are stable in Ljubljana? No fascism yet? You got to be careful. Everywhere we got to be careful. It's very much in fashion, fascism.
True. But Ljubljana is actually quite alright.
Good. It's a beautiful country, they say. I have to come to visit. I have to go visit. How large is the Jewish community there? A couple of hundred?
Well, yeah, something like that. About
200 or 300 people? The ones who, they may be more. There are only 200 that say they're Jewish,
those that, yeah.
right?
Those that I know about.
Yes, right. Because many of them, I guess. Charles, how are you today? Anything new in your saga? Did anything resolve itself with the car and everything? Well, I remember that you were concerned that they may not renew your driver's license. You still have the car?
Yeah, it's still
That's good. That's good. 'Cause I know you were fearful of that.
going in and cleaning the house out because I thought I had to get out of there.
Well, the house gives you some financial resource after that, you know. And where do you want to relocate? There are a number of places I could recommend. Yeah, well, you'll get there, I'm sure. But what particularly is acting up? Yeah, the back. Yes, I remember that you told me. I tell you, everything with COVID messed everything up, you know.
Well, you know, you can't get appointments.
That's right. It's really crazy.
I went to visit people and apparently went somebody outside of my
Plan.
insurance.
Right? Was it good? But a very mild case, I assume. hopefully it does not advance, that's the main thing.
That's the thing. We're trying to keep this up.
What do we know? Yeah, yeah. Yes, it's not the same.